Welcome back, Sebastian here. So time for my preview for the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix. So first taking a look at your track layout. Of course, the Monaco Street Circuit, one of the narrowest tracks on the calendar, if not the narrowest on the entire calendar. Overtaking areas, not really existent here. Really, your best shot is into the Nouvelle Chicane, going through the tunnel. Turn one again, opening lap. It's possible to gain or lose a position there. But, realistically, this is a track that's going to be a race that's going to be won in qualifying and in the pit stops on Sunday. Sector 1 of the lap, basically you do have Saint Devote, the first corner, and then you have Massenet and Casino Square. Sector 2, you of course have the tightest corner in Formula 1, the hairpin. You have Portier, and then the Nouvelle Chicane plus Tabac to end that sector. Final sector of the lap, you have the two pretty high-speed chicanes, the entrance and exit of the swimming pool chicane, and you have Rasgas and the final corner as well, with that one DRS zone going from the final corner into Saint Devote, with a total of 19 corners total. The track layout, 3.337 kilometers. We're expected to have 78 laps on Sunday. The race lap record is a 1:12.909 set by Lewis Hamilton in 2021. Even though something new for this year, it's a mandatory two-stop race, I don't think that's going to allow this year's fastest lap to be the all-time track lap record, just because I think 2021 cars are still a little bit quicker than this year's. In terms of the average speed of that fastest lap, 165 kilometers an hour, which makes sense, is the slowest of the 24 tracks on this year's calendar. In fact, it's the slowest by, I think, over 20 kilometers an hour, so not a big surprise there. As a result, downforce rating is a 1.0. This is the highest downforce track the calendar. The teams are basically going to be stacking as much downforce on, simply because there are so few long straights. Drag is not really a big deal, and there's so many very, very slow corners. And in fact, you're only going full throttle for 33% of the lap, which is very little indeed. Now, in terms of corner tendency, I would say definitely a lot of slow corners. There's a couple corners that you could maybe barely claim are medium speed corners, such as, Tabac and the entrance of the swimming pool chicane, but overall a lot of really slow corners, and this is a rear limited circuit, similar to Bahrain, I would say. So acceleration out of those slow corners, preserving those rears is going to be more important than the front tires, for example. Now, in terms of some other additional stats, pole win percentage, 71% since 2010. I believe there's 4 races in that stretch where the Pulsar hasn't won. There was a stretch between 2015 and 2017 where the Pulsar didn't win any of those races. And then, of course, you have the 2022 Monaco Grand Prix. And again, if you're curious what happened there, Ferrari had a bit of an oopsie with the strategy with Charles Leclerc that race. Now, in terms of rookie out qualifying percentage, it is only 35%, which is seems a little bit low. Actually, it seems a little bit high given Monaco's reputation for being, such a difficult track for rookies. We've had quite a few rookies in the past, for 4 or 5 years, I would say, where they've come to Monaco and been like half a second or so off their teammate for basically the whole weekend. But oddly enough, that 35% ranks 11th of the 24 tracks on this year's calendar. So a little bit of an odd one. It's a very unusual circuit. And again, pretty much all the drivers will have had experience on this track in Formula 2, so it's not an absolutely brand new circuit. Now, safety car percentage, relatively low for a track as narrow as Monaco, and that's 56%. And of course, the first race was in 1950, the first year of the F1 World Championship. So this is one of the most, if not the most historic track on the calendar, and it's one that the drivers definitely look forward to every single year. So moving on to the tires for this weekend. So soft C6, medium C5, and hard C4. So same tires that we had at Imola. In terms of the schedule for this weekend, Friday, FP1, 1:30 in the afternoon. Formula 2 qualifying, 3:10 in the afternoon, followed by FP2 being at 5 p.m. The weather for FP2, 20 degrees and sunny. So again, should be a pretty rain-free weekend. Moving on to Saturday, FP3 12:30 in the afternoon, followed by the Formula 2 sprint race at 2:15 and F1 qualifying at 4 p.m. sharp. The expected weather for that qualifying session is 20 degrees and sunny. Finishing up with Sunday, of course, the big day, although the day probably with the least amount of, I think, I would say least amount of, drama in the sense that, we don't really expect a whole lot to change from the starting grid to the end of the race. But Formula 2 feature race 9:40 in the morning, and then the Grand Prix at 3 p.m. sharp. Weather forecast for that Grand Prix is 20 degrees and sunny. Now, taking a look at last year's race, your winner was Charles Leclerc finally winning his home Grand Prix. Second was Oscar Piastri, and third was Carlos Sainz. Now, in terms of big moments from that race, of course, the big one was the lap 1 red flag caused by the crash between Sergio Perez and the two Haas drivers of Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg. Of course, that lap 1 red flag meant that everyone changed their tires and basically did the entire race on a one-stop strategy, which has led to this very reactionary move to make the race a two-stop race. We'll see how it goes. I know the red flag tire change loophole is one that people, complain about, and it's been talked about before. I remember 2020 Italian Grand Prix was another one where that loophole was, criticized quite a bit. Honestly, one way, I know for safety reasons, they have to allow tire changes during red flags. But again, one really easy way to do this would be that any tire changes that you make during the red flag don't count towards your one mandatory pit stop. And that would have been, an alternative way to do it without mandating a two-stop race. The other big moment from this race, of course, was that Esteban Ocon decided to try a very ambitious overtake on his teammate Pierre Gasly, exiting Porsche, kind of just ignoring team orders, and this, almost certainly contributed to him basically getting announced that he would be leaving the team at the end of the season. The rest of the race, not a whole lot. The top 10 all finished in their starting position. There was a couple position changes in the bottom 10, but yeah, pretty uneventful race, and that was one that was definitely a bit of a snoozer, doing both the review and doing the power rankings after, where I basically just sat there and said, this driver outqualified their teammate by X tenths of a second and moved on. But yeah, really because since the race was so uneventful. But now, moving on to best qualifiers, worst qualifiers. Arguably, this is the one weekend where this will be the most important, as, overtaking is so difficult, like I said before. But so looking at best qualifiers compared to their career average, best qualifier is actually Yuki Tsunoda, 25 plus 25%, with a median career percent delta of 2.8 tenths of a second in his favor. Number 2, not a big surprise, Charles Leclerc plus 18% with a median out-qualifying delta of 2.4 tenths of a second in his favor. And then number 3, a bit of a surprise given that he's been teammates with the driver number 2 for so long, and that is Carlos Sainz plus 10%, median qualifying gap of basically 26 thousandths of a second. Now, worst qualifier, there's a couple of surprise names here. Number 1 is Nico Hulkenberg, negative 18%, median qualifying delta of 9 thousandths of a second against him. Number 2 is Max Verstappen, negative 16%. He's still in the positive, above 50%, but still much lower than his career average, which is something like 80%. So you can see when you look at the median qualifying gap, 4 tenths of a second in his favor. He still outqualifies his teammates by absolutely massive margins here, but just from a percentage basis in terms of number of occurrences, he's not quite as good at Monaco as he is at some other tracks. And then number 13 is Pierre Gasly, number 3, Pierre Gasly, negative 13%, median qualifying gap of 7 hundredths of a second. So taking a look at the quality model predictions for this weekend, all of them using qualifying data from Monaco, except for the Racing Bulls pairing of Lawson and Hadjar, where the model has finally switched to now predicting Hadjar is going to be the one to out-qualify Lawson. Now, in terms of the rest of the teams, the drivers who are predicted to out-qualify their teammates this weekend are Piastri, Leclerc, Verstappen, Russell, Alonso, still Colapinto, a bit of a surprise there, Ocon, Albon and Bortoleto. Now, in terms of predictions for this weekend, it is a bit of a tricky one. I think McLaren likely are going to be very, very strong here as well, just like they were, or just like they've been all weekend, or all season, I should say. So I am going to predict a McLaren 1-2. I do think that they have the overall best package. And while this race can sometimes throw up a bit of a curveball, just because sometimes, we saw, Ocon get a podium here 2 years ago, pretty much on pace, just because the circuit layout is so unique. Teams can basically stack as much downforce on their cars as they want. And again, they don't have to deal with some of the, aerodynamic compromises of not having too much drag. But I am going to put McLaren 1-2 with Piastri in front of Norris. Norris's qualifying struggles have, continued to be an issue. They were an issue in Imola, and given how important qualifying is in this for this race, I think it's pretty pertinent to put, Piastri in front of Norris. But again, that being said, given how close the qualifying battle has been at the front, a bad qualifying from either McLaren driver could easily see them not finish on the podium, given that their race pace advantage will be pretty much nullified here. Because overtaking is so difficult. Now, for the final spot on the podium, I was honestly really tempted to put one of the Williams drivers, but I do think this is a race where you're going to have to qualify top 3, top 4, and the Williams, while they've been, quite good the last couple of tracks that we've been on, I can't realistically see them qualifying top 3, top 4. I think realistically it's either going to be Mercedes or Red Bull that are going to be joining the McLaren's drivers on the podium. I'd love to put another home podium for Leclerc, but I think realistically, the Ferrari has been absolutely abysmal in both with tracks with lots of curbs and tracks with lots of slow corners. So I can't see them doing particularly well here this weekend. Despite the fact that, Leclerc's such an exceptional qualifier around this track. I think for Red Bull, they've been slow corners and, rear limited tracks have been a bit of a weakness for them this season. They've looked a lot stronger than I thought they would in Imola. So it's possible that kind of form carries over and they're able to, nick a podium or even get a win here. But I do think the Mercedes should be pretty strong, and they've been one of the, I think, most consistent teams outside of McLaren in terms of qualifying pace. They've always been, there or thereabouts. Not necessarily the fastest, but a lot more consistent than Red Bull, who've basically, swung from being very, very good, being able to take pole positions and being like the 4th best car like they were in Bahrain. And I'm not really sure which version we're going to get in Monaco. So I'm going to be a little bit conservative here and put George Russell on the podium, predicting that he'll get his first podium at Mercedes. So there you go. There's my preview for the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix. Should be a good one. Qualifying is always special here. The race, we'll see what the 2-stop does. I don't think it's going to spice things up a whole lot. If there's another first lap red flag, drivers will just pit, and then they'll just pit again in their normal, pit window, kind of around the first, 30-40% of the race. But again, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.